Chrissie, I brought you wrong.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell out before you blow up a plane.
Basha K. Ali!
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what good thing to say? I dabbled in stand-up or something. I haven't been disrespectful to you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt. I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean. Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr podcast. Please like and subscribe if you're listening to us on YouTube. And of course, you can listen to this podcast just about everywhere. Twitter, X, Rumble, Rockfin, Facebook, Twitch, Spotify, SoundCloud, all of the places. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I got a couple of stand-up comedy shows coming up. If you missed the show in Mount Kisco last weekend, have no fear. You can come see me on Long Island in August. I'll be in Plano, Texas in September, Massillon, Ohio in October, San Diego in October, and Phoenix, Arizona this November. Tickets will be coming soon to my website, chrissiemayr.com. So do buy tickets. Come out. It's fun. Remember going out? Okay. Today's guest is not my favorite character from Love on the Spectrum, although we will be talking about it. He is a reactionary, I love this, reactionary Catholic Zoomer, contributor to Courage Media, host of Tomlinson Talks, and deprogrammed at New Culture Forum, formerly the Lotus Eaters. Welcome to the show, Connor Tomlinson.
Hello, yeah, I'm the autist, but not the one that can't get a girlfriend.
I was all ready to do my research on you, and I was like, oh my God, same exact name as the Connor from Love on the Spectrum, which I am slightly embarrassed to say is perhaps my favorite show at the moment. And I don't know why I like it so much. I think only like all dating shows should be featuring autistic people. I don't think we should do away with regular people dating shows.
I think we're going for a civilizational bottleneck where basically being an autist is a sort of survival mechanism. It's the only way you can disagree with the prevailing orthodoxy. Either that or you double down on it and become Chris Chan. I avoided the latter.
I'm very late to the Chris Chan lore and history. I've been trying to learn as much as I can, but it's just, I
wouldn't.
It's shocking. It's disturbing. He's quite a specimen. So it's really icky. We don't Google him. Don't make the same mistake I did, people of the chat. And you know, this is going to sashay into our topic pretty well. I think it seems like the only way you can get away with speaking against really anything is to claim autism, and then people will go, oh, okay. They're not Islamophobic. They're not homophobic. They're not anti-Semitist. They're just autistic. Let's let them go.
That's the Chris from Family Guy defense, if I remember correctly. Unfortunately, it doesn't work over here in the Islamic Republic of the United Kingdom. I mean, considering we have online speech laws, basically, Chrissie, as a keen viewer of Friday Night Tights, I know that I'm essentially running the risk of being arrested at any point. Just chatting to you, so this might be my last broadcast. So
is that really true? I know people have been getting arrested for tweets, but podcasts as well.
12,000 arrests per day for speech violations. A year. So it's 33 a day in the UK.
You know, God forbid we keep track of actual crimes and focus on that.
The majority of police forces have not solved a single burglary in the last year.
So burgle all you want in the UK, people, but just don't make fun of Islam. Yikes. When did this start to creep up? So essentially, and you can explain a bit further, what we have going on in the UK right now is, for the sake of multiculturalism, it seems, well, let's see, I was reading something that put it really well, that it's basically multiculturalism is going above, free speech. And you technically don't have blasphemy laws in the UK, but explain how things have kind of been screwed up to where you're at the point where the British elites have basically capitulated to Islamo censorship.
So, if I remember correctly, the blasphemy laws that were introduced by Oliver Cromwell after the English Civil War in 1648 were abolished in 2008. We've had an unofficial blasphemy law since at least 1986 with the Public Order Act, which was passed by a Conservative government. We're going to see a repeated motif here. And what happens is, if you say something outside of your own home that can be misconstrued as grossly offensive or causing harassment, alarm, and distress, all those very well-defined words, you can get a knock on the door from the police or be arrested on the spot, as almost happened to me in 2022, actually. I was chatting to some local journalist who had overheard a street preacher and an anti-abortion protester arguing, and she just said to me, "What do you think of it?" And I had no clue, because I just turned up to be a spectator. And she had explained to me, he was saying, gay people are unnatural and abortion is wrong. And I said, well, there's a difference between gay people and the trans lobby and gender ideology. And some of these activists are pushing some really insidious stuff. And some short, fat, bespectacled police officer walked over to me with 10 of his friends and a shoulder-mounted camera, wagged his finger in my face on film, and said, "I've just overheard you insulting this woman's sexuality." So he hadn't heard the conversation at all. "And if you keep going down that road, you're on the cusp of a public order offence, and I will arrest you." And this happens to plenty of people in the country. And then in 1988, they rolled that out across the internet. And then they made it even worse in 2003 with the Malicious Communications Act, which is what Count Dankula was actually tried with for his pug video. And then in 2022 and 2023, they introduced the Online Safety Act, which gives Ofcom, which is like the state broadcast regulator, jurisdiction over anything that's broadcast on the internet. We don't actually know how that's going to be applied yet, because that's all going to be done in guidance. So if they feel like they don't like me saying things about Islam on YouTube, for example, then they leverage fines against YouTube until they censor in their favor. And then they did the Public Order Bill 2023, which put buffer zones around abortion clinics, which is why you keep seeing those videos of Isabel Vaughan Spruce or Adam Smith Connor or Libby Tossivi Bolt, who J.D. Vance and the State Department have mentioned a few times, including at Munich, for being arrested for silently praying in their own head. Because apparently in Scotland now as well, if you're seen praying in your own head, in your own home, and you live within the vicinity of the abortion buffer zone, you can be arrested.
Who decides what is offensive? Let's say you were having a conversation with a woman on the street. Let's say you had called her sexuality insidious and she was okay with that, and you're just having a back and forth, and maybe she had insulted you for something prior. How do the cops decide what is offensive?
Well, I was quite lucky, because this journalist in question was just as confused as I was. And she said, well, he hadn't insulted me. But if she decided that she didn't like me disagreeing with her and then lied and said he did, then I would be arrested on the spot, because the police are told not to engage in secondary victimization. And what that means is asking for evidence. If you are a member of a protected characteristic under the Equality Act 2010, that the Loving Puppies and Kittens Act that throws people in prison, then you are a marginalized group, and therefore you don't actually need to give any kind of evidence that your life is under threat, or according to the Brandenburg test that violence is going to be committed against you. Instead, the police can either arrest someone, charge them, or what they'll do is they'll leverage a non-crime hate incident, which I know people say Orwellian is an overplayed trope here, but it really is. If something doesn't meet the threshold of a crime, but it still upsets someone, then it will be recorded against you. You won't know that it's been recorded against you, but it will be on your permanent record, and it can stop you getting a job if you go for a background check. So it's just a scarlet letter against your name for offending minorities and multiculturalism.
And there's no way to work that off.
No, the police have to lift that.
Oh, this is so scary. This is so scary to really every country who claims to have free speech. It's just it's such a slippery slope, and you want to think like, how did we get to this place? And then I guess many of the people in charge over there just happen to be Islamic, right? And they're gonna kind of enforce this in their favor, it seems, for as long as they're in power.
There's a real mix. I mean, it's less a slippery slope and just a shoot straight down now. But of course, the people that brought the caliphate in by means of opening the doors were not themselves Muslims. It's just that now the growth of sectarian independent Islamic candidates, 4 of them were elected at the last general election. They just sit in parliament now, constantly talking. They talk about cousin marriage in parliament. Lovely, great. Glad we're having that debate.
That's fine. Great.
Yeah. But they said, people from the Middle East and Africa see it as an enriching practice that brings wealth to their communities. And it's like, right, just say you fancy your cousin. But anyway.
Just say you're terrible at dating.
Yeah. Just go on Love on the Spectrum. So they're using these laws that are already on the books as a Trojan horse to insulate Islam from criticism. But the people that pass the laws are usually white liberals who want to act as the arbiters of correct opinion and want to exist as the kind of guardrails in which competing doctrines of the good, culture, religion can coexist all under the banner of liberalism. And so what they do is they construct a kind of total state to intervene in every single private interaction and relationship to ensure that no one is being offended, nobody's freedom is being limited, nobody is unequal. And so they put these laws in place, not foreseeing that tribal, indigestible, imported minority groups will use them to their own advantage and then just like judo flip liberalism on its head, which is why it's particularly vulnerable to this. And that's why now you've got the ruling government constantly being pressured by Muslim activists to adopt an Islamophobia law. Islamophobia, by the way, was a word invented by the Muslim Brotherhood to ensure that you couldn't criticize Islam. So the government are doing that. At the same time,
similar to anti-Semitism, right? Didn't Jewish people come up with that term?
Yeah, well, so the Muslim Brotherhood actually said that anti-Semitism and homophobia were so successful that we're going to invent one just like it. And then the same year that Tony Blair got elected, 1997, a group called the Runnymede Trust, and Runnymede is where the Magna Carta was written, so that's how like insidious this is. They wrote a paper saying Islamophobia, the rising issue in Britain, and it's been on the books ever since. But the Labour government are petrified of loads of their cabinet ministers losing their seats to Muslim candidates because they've relied on the Muslim vote as a block for years now. And now loads of Muslims have just turned around with access to the internet and gone, oh, why don't we just vote for Muslims along Muslim lines? We don't have to rely on the Labour Party anymore. So they've now got 2 parties working in their interest. They've got this weird independent Muslim party and the Labour government falling over themselves to keep Muslims on the voting plantation. And so this is being enforced on the majority who don't give a damn and just don't want this going on in their country and have voted in every election for the last 50 years against this happening.
Wow, it's there's a lot of similarities between them and our Democratic Party, who at this point has kind of spiraled out of control. They don't even know what they are anymore. They failed at importing a bunch of illegals that they were going to count on for their votes, but it wasn't enough to beat Trump this time. So wow. Can you explain how there was an instance that kind of a debate that kind of lit this all up again semi-recently? There was a man named Hamid Coxon who was charged for burning a Quran outside a Turkish consulate in London.
Yeah, there was he did it on camera, and I believe there was a guy that ran out and tried to stab him as he was doing it. But he still got charged for inciting racial hatred, the public order offense. The original charge by the Westminster judges was that he caused offense to the institution of Islam. Now, that's not legal because even under these absurd laws, you have to offend a specific person or a community, which is basically another word for race or class in this country. But now they're just openly saying, well, you've upset Islam as an entity, so how is that just not a blasphemy law? And that charge got changed to upsetting Muslims, just sort of like aggregated Muslims that just exist somewhere. So the Ummah. So yeah, you've upset again Islam. This follows Labour MP called Tahir Ali, who got up in Parliament in November and said to the Prime Minister that based on a UN resolution that Britain voted against, we should ban desecrating the texts of the Abrahamic religions. I think we know exactly which one he was talking about there. And then earlier this year, he also, at the height of the grooming gang scandal, which Elon Musk, among others, helped gain global attention, he decided to advocate for the British government building an airport in Mirpur, Pakistan. Now, Mirpur, Pakistan is exactly the region where the overwhelming majority of the grooming gang perpetrators come from.
Oh, wow.
So everyone on Twitter, including me, was replying to him, basically saying, unless it receives more deportation flights than departures, we're not particularly interested. But you can see how censorship, growing the demographic to then turn it into democratic change in order to push through these Islamic blasphemy laws is high on the agenda for both these independent Muslim MPs and the Muslim MPs in the Labour Party. So we're in a pretty tricky spot there.
You were saying something that I found so fascinating, and maybe you can explain a bit further how you've gotten to a point where it's easier to police. Basically, it's easier to police white people who are, I guess, easier to generally better behaved than it is to maybe address certain groups that have low impulse control and are a little bit more of a pain in the ass. And that's why, British white people are basically getting arrested for tweets instead of dealing with, people, adults abusing children, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a reason in this country our police never carried guns until recently, until we had to put, diversity bollards all over the capital cities to stop our Christmas markets being enriched by diversity. And that's because the police were founded under Sir Robert Peel with the principle of being policed by consent, which meant that the English, in their sort of polite way, would take a rap on the knuckles for doing something wrong. Obviously, you had edge cases that just disregarded the law entirely, but that's why we had a very punitive legal code for a while that hung people for theft and things like that, which public polling, especially in the light of recent terror attacks, seems to want to go back to, but not a single politician, well, maybe one or two now, are in favor of bringing that back. But when you diversify the culture, when you fracture it, when you bring in other conceptions of what is good, when you have groups that base their morality on what advantages their family, their clan, the ummah, their ethnicity, their religion, and therefore they will only operate insofar as the law advantages them, then you break up policing by consent, and you get it so that the only people that are policed by consent are the polite English people who will believe in the institutions, they will believe that the rule of law is fair, they will believe that I will see this process through to the end and I won't be unduly punished, even if I'm being hauled over the coals for a tweet. Whereas the actual justice system, believing that these minorities are oppressed by the dint of them not being white, by the dint of them being Muslims, etc., treat them much more leniently. The worst example of this recently was Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood. Yes, that is her name. She was I know, yeah. She was sitting on judicial guidance that was going to be passed by something called the Sentencing Council. Basically, we've much like you've got three-letter agencies. Ever since 1997, we've had hundreds of NGOs pop up within government that sit above government departments. So you know how Trump, when he comes in and he can fire loads of civil servants and make new appointments, there is basically nobody in the UK civil service you can fire. And per capita, our civil service is bigger than China. So they run everything. And there's a group called the Sentencing Council that set guidance that the judges have to carry out. So even if Parliament passes laws, this council, which is wholly unelected and unaccountable, say how the laws are enforced. And they were going to say that if you're an ethnic minority, if you're a cultural minority, if you're a religious minority, Muslim, if you're trans or gender non-conforming and have a minority sexual identity, then you will get more lenient sentences for the same crime than white men. And yeah, so it's a blatant apartheid system. And the Justice Secretary had a lawyer present as her representative at all the meetings that sort of okayed this guidance. And until it was made into the press and it was made a big hullabaloo and she couldn't defend it, even though she supported it in principle, she then left it right until the day it was being implemented to say, we're going to block this. But the intention was to lock up the host majority population of Britain, so straight white Christian men, at higher rates than demographics which per capita commit a lot more crime. For example, I think Muslims are about 6% of the general population, but about 18% of the prison population.
Wow.
So vast overrepresentation there in specific types of crime as well, as we've already mentioned. And they were going to be allowed to walk free earlier or have less harsher sentences than white men just because they are white men.
And Muslims don't really share the same kind of kumbaya attitude that a lot of white liberals do. Like if the shoe were on the other foot, would they be like, "Oh wow, thank you so much"? Like they would go ahead and make fun of gay people and white people. Like they don't care. It doesn't really seem to work both ways. And why doesn't that seem to matter?
Yeah, they charge us a jizya, which I think technically, considering my taxes are going on subsidizing the hotel fees for anyone who gets in a dinghy from France, crosses the channel and says, I'm fleeing war and persecution from France. I think that is a sort of tax against Christians on Muslims' behalf, but there you go. But yeah, what I think the reason for this cognitive dissonance is they believe fundamentally in the blank slate, which means that they think just by passing through the passport gates of Heathrow and Gatwick and making contact with British values, which is sort of just in the air, they believe in democracy and the rule of law and playing cricket or something, that they will even the craziest jihadist will lose his illiberal prejudices and become as indistinguishably British as King Henry VIII or Hengist and Horsa or something. And loads of them do believe this. I mean, if you ever want to tear your hair out, watch anything or read anything by a chap called Fraser Nelson. Now, he used to run the leading conservative magazine called The Spectator in this country, and he used to write for the Telegraph, and now he writes for the Times, which is like the last outpost for Japanese soldiers who still think the war's going on 40 years after they've surrendered. And he is insistent that Rishi Sunak, our former prime minister, is English. Now, Rishi Sunak's always identified as a British Indian. He wasn't elected. He helped coup out 2 prime ministers to be installed by his own party. And when he was put in, all the Indian press was celebrating it as finally a son of India sits on the throne of our former empire. We've got one up on our former colonizers. So if the country of his heritage is acknowledging that this is of advantage to them, and then Fraser Nelson is saying, no, you can't see any differences here. He is as British as you and me. If you apply that to less benevolent minorities, like sort of imperially minded Muslims who see immigration as a religious duty, then that leads into very difficult territory, because basically the British have disarmed themselves to acting as a collective in the interests of their own history, their own heritage, their own culture. But instead, democracy can be hijacked by very illiberal tribal minorities that exert their in-group preference, vote as a bloc, and then lock down certain areas so that they become their own little fiefdoms forever. Eventually, Muhammad is the #1 baby name in England now. Eventually, that's just going to grow across the entire country if something doesn't change.
Wow. And they can just pick, oh, look, they're eating crumpets. They're fully British. That's very concerning and scary. There's some good comments in the chat here. Almost a third of British Muslims think it would be desirable to implement Sharia law within the next 2 decades.
Yeah, 52% think you should criminalize drawings of Muhammad, and 3/4 think Hamas did nothing wrong on October 7th, which is just a statement of intent to repeat it.
What is it? What do you even do at this point?
Well, if a government was sufficiently courageous enough, they could do a number of things. One, millions of foreign nationals are claiming benefits in this country. Like, half of all of the taxpayer subsidized housing in London goes to people who are born abroad. And that's not even counting second generation immigrants who repeat the patterns of their parents. Why is a single person that's born abroad living in housing at my space? 72% of the Somalians that live in Britain live in social housing. Like, not every Somalian is Ayaan Hirsi Ali. I think they should go back to Mogadishu. And if you just take away these subsidies, they will. Or they'll end up committing crimes. And if you just enforce the law against them rather than give them special privileges, you either put them in prison or you deport them. Like, there's 13,000 foreign criminals in British prisons. Why are they here? Why am I paying for them? Nobody has any answers. And then all you can do as well, we are an explicitly Christian country. Like, America Americans like to pretend that they're not an explicitly Christian country, even though all the founders pretty much were Christian. All of the founding states had established churches, state constitutions have God in it, etc., etc. Britain has an established church. Now, I may not like the Church of England, but we are an explicitly Christian country. So if we flexed our muscles and just said, no, actually, we're not tolerating Islamic schools. No, you can't wear a bin bag in public and walk around with a niqab. No, we're not doing halal slaughter. No Islamic charity or mosque is getting state funding. All these things, you just make it an environment where they can't create these little hotbeds of sedition. And the very few Muslims who are happy to come along and not make any trouble, if they're net contributors, if it really is a sort of reformed version of Islam and it's private worship, it doesn't interfere with things, most British people will not be bothered by that. Those are an infinitesimally small number, and I could probably count them on one hand. So we don't make our immigration policy for exceptions, but you will attract those very small number of exceptions if the British public want to let them in, of course. But the majority will just go home, and hundreds of thousands do every year. Like, I don't know if you know this, America has about legal immigration for the whole country of 1 million a year. Britain has 1.2 million, and we're the size of New York State.
Ooh.
So
how is that happening? Where do they go?
You tell me. Look, houses of multiple occupancy, they mainly concentrate around cities. The reason this happened is because Brexit happened, and then rather than Brexit being a mandate to reduce immigration, as the people that voted for it wanted it to be, the people that carried it out were treacherous globalists who said, right, so rather than just European migration, we're going to open up the borders to non-European migration. Overnight, it went from 80% European to 86% non-European, and went from like 500,000 a year to 1.2 million a year, 95% of whom don't contribute positively in taxes. And that's without even considering the cultural aspects. But what happens is every year, a few 100,000 leaves, about 300 to 500,000. So you get net migration of about 700 to 900,000, but that's only because like hundreds of thousands are going. If you just stop all the incentives, if you clamp down on visas, if you ensure that the English way of life, Christianity and our culture is supreme and the only one that you have to abide by in order to be here, then those hundreds of thousands that go out every year for economic reasons will just continue to go out until things stabilize and we have a bit more of a neighborly culture again.
Yeah, and our illegals too, same thing. They're just here for the benefits. They are sending a lot of the money back home. They're not interested in getting any kind of a job and contributing. It just makes you feel like a schmuck for being a taxpayer. And there's really nothing you can do.
Yeah, it's certainly not fun considering we have the highest tax burden since 1948. Currently, the government are levying a death tax on farmers that's going to raise, I think, £500 million over a couple of years and destroy all our farming.
A death tax on farmers? Is this paying farmers off to basically like destroy?
Yeah, well, so the Conservative government tried to do that and pay farmers to shut their farms and retire early, but now they're just stealing directly. So what you're going to have to do is, if you want to inherit the farmland, you have to pay a tax to be able to do so. But obviously farmers are asset rich but cash poor, so they're gonna have to sell the farmland in order to pay for the tax. So, and then the same amount of money that's projected to raise, they're giving away in foreign aid to Rwandan farmers to grow tea. Like, okay. And we also spend £14.4 billion a year and increasing on illegal immigrants. So just the entire system is perverse and backwards, which is why people are getting sufficiently outraged. And this is why it's currently the most, they've gone from a default landslide because people hated the last government and they had really low voter turnout, but they got a massive landslide in terms of seats, to now being the most unpopular government on record.
Wow. Do you see anybody coming up that might be able to enforce some of these ideas and turn the country around?
Well, that is a depressing prospect. So we're in the wilderness a little bit at the moment, because Reform UK is led by Nigel Farage, which most people will associate with Brexit. He is the most popular politician in the country at the moment, and his party have just become the largest at the local elections, winning like 677 seats from zero because they're brand new, basically. So they're riding high, and one would think, brilliant, okay, we've got a populist insurgent party. But until a week before the elections happened, they were saying mass deportations are a dark and dangerous use of rhetoric, something which the American State Department were not too happy about because he's basically counter-signaling Trump. They have a Muslim chairman who called the police on one of their most popular MPs and threw him out of the party, saying that he made some rude comments to him 3 months before he actually called the police on him. And it turns out that was all bogus, and the guy has been completely cleared of any wrongdoing. And the way I can describe it is one of Farage's advisors once said that he likes to surf the wave without being ahead of the pack. So he waits until it's acceptable to say a thing and then says it after everyone else has said it, but will at that point denounce everyone that says it that's earlier than him. And so it's not a great tactic because it makes it harder for everyone else who wants him to succeed and is encouraging the party to live up to its potential to operate. For example, when he was saying, we can't do mass deportations, it's impossible, his own voters, 99% of Reform voters, said, we want them, we expect them, it's the reason we vote for you. Even 65% of the far left Green Party said, we want to deport all foreign sex offenders. So rhetorically, the populist right-wing party was slightly to the left of the eco-communist Islamic party for a while there. So, and part of the reason is they just feel shackled by the constraints of only talking to a hostile media bubble in Westminster. They haven't learned the Trump tactic yet of treat the media as your enemy all the time, and then you'll treat the public as your friends. They still are petrified of being called racist by people that are always going to be calling them racist and would rather their movement capsize than succeed. So at the moment, they're the only game in town. The Conservatives who betrayed the country have slipped down to, I think, 16% in the polls. They're now the fourth party out of Labour, Liberal Democrats, who are completely irrelevant left-wingers who whine about Trump all the time, and Reform. So they're not even a right-wing party anyway because they conducted this mass immigration and all the other problems. And then the MP that was ostracized from Reform is a chap called Rupert Lowe. He's very popular on Twitter. Elon Musk likes him very much. He's currently just a one-man army. He's an independent MP. There's rumors that he might start another party of his own. The issue is, of course, and I'm not going to discourage him from that, the more the merrier, especially if he's going to live up to his principles. The issue is we only have another 3.5 to 4 years for an election cycle. And what we've got to do is we've basically got to do everything that Trump did during those 4 years in the wilderness with Susie Wiles, get all those executive order style legislation together, written. You've got to know who you're going to hire and employ in all these civil service departments. You've got to select hundreds of people to become MPs. You've got to have a roadmap to go on day one before you get lawfare like Trump has seen, or before you get civil service just saying, no, we're not doing this and we're going to gum up the works with strategic non-compliance. And so having to start from scratch with a new party to do that will be really difficult. It's possible, but it's not encouraging at the moment. It's hard to be optimistic about my country.
Yeah, that makes sense because I bet Trump just used, even before he won the election, he probably was spent a lot of time working on. You just have to have so much ready for day one than I think a normal president would be like, oh, I'll figure it out. I'll figure out who I'm going to hire. But he learned so many lessons from his first term. Just can't trust basically anybody already working there, because they're all swampy twats. Oh, we have a super chat from K to the Swiss for 5. Thank you for having Connor on. Hopefully more Lotus eaters appear on the Chrissie Mayr show. Thank you for spelling my name wrong, K to the Swiss. It's right there. It's right there. When did they change the name of the show from Lotus Eaters to New Culture Forum?
Oh no, it's different place. I left Lotus Eaters in March. I was also co-hosting another show at New Culture Forum. Still am. Reason I left Lotus Eaters is nothing to do with the outlet. They're all really lovely chaps. I basically just have to stay quiet on what I've been working on behind the scenes. So there's a bunch of things happening in British politics that will be announced soon, but I can't spill beans. I'm working on everyone else's timeline, unfortunately, but they genuinely, people, if they don't already watch the Lotus Eaters, they should. Carl is an absolute gentleman, and they put out some quality stuff, and I've got nothing but good memories from my time there.
Okay, good. All right, so no hints, nothing, no little breadcrumbs about what you'll be working on.
It's hopefully it has a substantial political impact, because we're about 5 years behind you guys, right? Starmer is essentially our Biden, and so we don't have the media infrastructure that was there during even Trump won, so that needs to be built up. And also, we don't have the kinds of American moment style institutions that can train up people to go and take jobs in our equivalent of the State Department. We don't have those bodies that can draft that legislation like Stephen Miller was doing for the executive orders. All that stuff needs to be built, and that takes a lot of very quiet, very behind the scenes work that I know a bunch of people are trying to do at the moment. And it just means it takes time off camera. So yeah,
that makes sense. Valley Law, I think this was going to be Connor from Love. Another person disappointed that you're not Connor from Love on the Spectrum.
Yeah, what can I say? I once went on TV and the producer didn't prepare in time, so their lower third they put a commentator and ex-professional footballer, and I was like, nope, not me. Wrong guy.
What would you prefer to be confused for, the footballer? Or
well, it depends who's richer. I am definitely the lowest earner out of the three famous Connor Tomlinson, and the least famous actually. So that's good.
Yeah, Connor. I swear. I mean, I watch the show a lot. All the people on Love on the Spectrum, their families are loaded because like they all do these. You can see their houses. They always they film inside the house. They all have like big houses. They all still live at home. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but none of these people are struggling. They're all like, oh, follow us. We're going to go to, I'm going to take I'm autistic. I'm taking my autistic girlfriend to Africa just for a fun little, we're dating trip. I was like, I've been with my husband now like 10 years. We've never been to Africa. I don't even think we've been outside the country together. It's just not that I'm jealous of these autistic people, but they are living pretty good lives and they're on TV all the time.
Yes, well, fortunately, my political class just brought Africa to me, so I actually don't need to travel.
Oh my God! I wanted to see. Oh, this is relevant. Torgo the White. Thanks for the 2. I'm a bronzy at Lotus Eaters. They're tops.
Yes. I know they've brought on some new hosts as of this week, and I know two of the 3 chaps and can vouch for their characters. So I hope that they've got lots of good things in the works.
I'm going to start saying chaps. It's the same thing they did to the ranches out west. Families were forced to sell acres just to pay property taxes. Ugh, disgusting, despicable.
That's what led to the farmers' revolt in the Netherlands. Is they were trying to put a carbon tax on them because they were using nitrate fertilizer, and so the farmers' movement ended up causing such an electoral crisis that the Netherlands government is still in turmoil. I think they had a coalition in the end that made a condition that Geert Wilders, even though he had the largest party, couldn't be prime minister, but at least they unseated the leftists at the time. It's funny, like the day before they concocted this plan on the farmers, they'd invited Bill Gates to Downing Street, and my friend keeps putting in an information request because we've got this thing called FOIs over here where you can send a letter to the government and say, under this act, I need all the publicly available data you've got on record. You have to publish it. And they keep telling my friend, no, the minutes of this meeting with Bill Gates and Larry Fink of BlackRock are confidential. We can't release it. Funny that.
Wow. Very interesting. I'm going to let's see. I'm going to show some of Connor's best moments here. If you're unfamiliar with his work.
Oh God.
This is what he tried to kiss this girl. He finally hit it off with this woman, and he's trying to like actually kiss her on the lips, and he starts like having a full panic attack. It was great.
Sorry. Oh man.
And she's blonde, but I didn't think that we were so hung up on the hair color. I just kind of thought
the mom tried to set him up with another girl, and she happened to be blonde, and he had a full meltdown because he is very strict on his rule on dating only brunettes.
A really nice family.
And you didn't think to tell me?
Connor.
I can hear just fine.
Okay.
Speak. Check demands a tip. I never pay any higher than
$5.
What?
Just 20%.
Connor, you wait, $5?
Do you understand that waitresses and waiters don't make a lot of money? That if you got great service and you gave someone $5, that's an insult.
All right. If copper feel I must, then copper feel I What is that? I don't know. Wait, what is that?
No, finish it.
Then copper feel I shall. Sweet.
All right.
No idea what that means.
He didn't know what that means. He thought it meant like have feelings. He thought cop a feel meant
I've
share.
never understood the appeal of reality TV. Apparently, there's a series that Channel 4 are running in this country called Virgin Islands, where they do basically the same premise, but they ship a bunch of people off who've never had sex before to an island.
Is it a Virgin Island?
I don't know if it is said Virgin Islands. I hear Epstein's old property isn't getting much use this time of year, but yeah.
Well, no one out there was a virgin. Sadly.
Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't know. These shows are just sort of. I never want to use the term exploitative because that sounds odd, but
Right,
I just
they kind of are.
my own life is mental enough. Why do I need to sit and watch everyone else be comparably mad as me?
I think it's for the same reason people watch My 600-Pound Life, because you go, okay, like at least I'm kind of fat, but I'm not like so fat I'm losing food inside my folds fat. And then you're like, I might be awkward at dating, I might be single, but I'm not like I might be kind of autistic. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm out of shape, but I don't have an arse in the front. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
The bar is indeed in hell.
Connor, I have to have you back. You're just the best. You're crazy smart, and it's not just because you're British. A lot of times, I'll hear somebody with a British accent. I go, "Wow, this guy knows everything." But it's you have a lot going on. Connor, tell the fine people where they can follow you. I know had to do a little bit of a quick one today because my babysitter is about to leave. So tell people where they can find you and follow you.
Yeah, well, pleasure as always. I got told by an American once, apparently, that my accent adds 10 IQ points to anything I say. So that means I'm above the negatives now. Yeah, I'm on X at @Con_Tomlinson. I host my former Lotus Eater show, Tomlinson Talks, now on YouTube, out from behind the paywall. And I write over at Courage Media in a place called The Critic in the UK, where I'm hopefully sufficiently acidic enough to wind up politicians.
Ooh, awesome. Connor, thank you so much for coming on. Definitely love to have you back sometime soon. And everybody listening, please subscribe and follow Connor on all the platforms. Thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.